Good afternoon, and welcome to the first panel of today, Sustainability and Design. My name is Aliaa, Elabd, and I am Assistant Professor of Architectural Engineering here at Faisal University. Many architects believe that their profession has the power to change the face of the earth, basically, and actually revert the challenges of climate change. There is no doubt that architecture is indeed a fertile realm to sustainable innovation. I think we can agree that there is no particular and single definition of sustainability. Sustainability can be associated with ideas such as reducing carbon footprint or reducing greenhouse gases, which is actually a huge challenge for a lot of us that requires a lot of innovation and creativity in many different ways, especially because we live in a world that is marked by abundance and also overconsumption. There is a wide range of applications to sustainability around the world, and I'm sure that you know them by now. So we have environmental sustainability, ecological sustainability, social, design, architectural sustainability, of course. But sustainability is not something new to us as Muslims and Arabs. It's part of our core values. It's instilled in our religion somehow. It's one of the values that we keep as part of our practicing of religion. Islam sees every member in the society as has an equal share in the amenities and the facilities of his or her environment. We all share the same resources, and consequently, we all share the same responsibility. It requires us not to waste resources and not to overuse them. So this is actually a great opportunity for us to discuss different ideas about sustainability through this panel. The focus of this panel is investigate various ideas and concepts related to architectural sustainability in two contexts, the Saudi context and the Kuwaiti context. We have our first speaker, architect Abdullatif Al Mishari, who will be speaking about the suburban block in Kuwait and how it evolved and how to evolve its archetypal norms to ensure continuity and evolution in a sustainable manner. Let me introduce architect Abdullatif to you first. He's a practicing architect and the principal at the Associated Architects Partnership, AAP, a practice that is based in Kuwait and Portugal and operates in several other countries. Abdullatif is a member of the Kuwaiti 2035 Vision Committee at the Supreme Council of Planning and Development of the State of Kuwait and a member of the High Committee of the Master Plan and Mega Projects. He's the co-founder of Arbana Project, a member of the board at Al Shahid Park, and the vice chairman of the Kuwait Architecture League. Abdullatif earned his bachelor's in architecture from the University of Southern California and his master's in architecture from the Graduate School of Design at Harvard. And the second talk of the day of the panel will be by architect Azzah Aldeghather, who will be discussing the roots and the principles of sustainability in early Muslim communities in Saudi architecture and the current situation in terms of what's logical, sustainable, and cost-effective. And then we'll introduce a critical point of view to the future of sustainability in terms of technology and progress. A brief about architect Azzah. Graduated from Syracuse University. Her interest in traditional building and urban planning has resulted in a special commitment to modern earth block technology and sustainability, resulting in certification in the training on compressed earth block machines, rammed earth, and ferrocement construction. Her special interest in Islamic principles and their application in urbanism, architecture, landscape, and interior design has gained a citation in the Aga Khan Islamic Architecture Awards, placed third in the national competition for King Abdulaziz Center for the Gifted, as well as exhibited in the United States for Mimaria's Utopia Strategic City Planning Concept. Most recently, she placed third in the international competition for a cultural hub with live-work housing in Busan, South Korea. She was selected for the Buckminster Fuller Challenge Catalyst Program for prototypical study of an Islamic Community Economic Development Center based on the Medina Charter. Impressive bios, and I'm sure that we will enjoy their talks together, so please help me welcoming architect Abdullatif first, and then architect Azzah. Please.
I wouldn't need the mic.
You can use this. Oh, yeah, this one.
Pointer حق البرزنتيشن. حق البرزنتيشن. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سعيد جدا أن نكون معاكم اليوم بالرياض. أحب أشكر مبادرة دار العلوم، جامعة الفيصل، ومركز عبد الرحمن السديري الثقافي. إذا تسمحوا لي بس البرزنتيشن بتكون باللغة الإنجليزية. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Today we're going to discuss sustainability, and if there's a point that I would like to make on the notion of sustainability is that it's a very dense word with many meanings. Two of the things that I think are very pertinent to the word sustainability are the facts that it's multi-scalar and multidisciplinary. There are a lot of different meanings that come and shape the word sustainability, and they're very contextual. And this reflects back as practitioners, as architects working in this realm, how do we go about constructing sustainable environments? So the presentation today is going to pertain to a very specific topic, to 3 projects that we currently have at AAP within the same vicinity, which is the Kuwaiti suburban block, أو الضواحي الكويتية. طبعا Kuwait sits on the northern part of the Arabian Gulf, and Kuwait City sits at the southern part of Kuwait Bay. The evolution of the city, as many other seafaring cities in the country, was more of a jump than an evolution, and I think Kuwait in 1952 preceded other cities in the Gulf in terms of planning and modernization. So we went very fast from a very dense organic urban fabric to a contemporary modernistic plan. I'm sorry شوية بس الكليكر. Thank you. If we can see the evolution of the city throughout the years from the early 1600s all the way to the early 1900s, it grew radially. The red and the blue and the green are the eventual city walls that surrounded the city and protected the city. In 1952, under Sheikh Abdullah Salim, Kuwait started modernizing, and this is the plan. I really apologize for the slides. The plan, the first plan of Kuwait, mandated the creation of self-sufficient urban neighborhoods as an extension of the original core city, in line with new town planning principles that came from England in reaction to industrialized London. So we started building these cities, as you can see, radially, and they became the dominant urban block to this day in Kuwait. Okay, so I'll refer to you if I want to go down. Okay, perfect. We see here the evolution of that system. The system, and this is a very important point, was not solely an urban or a spatial system. It was an economic, social system. So within the decree of creating this plan, we decided that the wealth of the oil is the wealth of the people. So it was a wealth distribution system whereby services went and became part of each neighborhood. And this welfare state that we've created in the early 50s, بعدها جت الconstitution, becomes part of how we in Kuwait perceive the notion of sustainable development. These neighborhoods are called KCUs, the kindergarten center units, and they take up currently more than 85% of the urbanized areas of Kuwait, of the metropolitan areas. Next. The way we construct them is, and this was something that was planned since 1952, we start with education. We start with the kindergarten. Around the kindergarten, we place a density of around 600 units. With that, we have a small co-op, a mosque, and certain amenities. 2 KCUs constitute a PCU, a primary center unit where we have the primary schools. 2 PCUs constitute the NCU, which is the neighborhood center unit, which has the main co-op in the middle and intermediate schools. So it's a very specific system that has been marching on since 1952. Next, please. That system institutionalized a way of working in Kuwait. So half of the work, if not more, of what the ministries do is cater to these neighborhoods. So although we're looking at an urban artifact, it's actually structured by a very strong institutional way of working. The reason why I say that is these notions are very important when we come to see how we can interject in these neighborhoods. So these neighborhoods, by, let's say, the contemporary understanding of sustainable, are not sustainable. They're urban sprawl. So by us coming in now and densifying them or changing the meaning of what they should be, as the conversation yesterday was with what the library is, we kind of نصطدم about these notions, mainly bureaucracy and the institutionalization of the block. Next. So this shows the amount of residential neighborhood in relation to the other types of land uses. Next. The center of Kuwait City was solely the commercial and government seat. Next. سامحوني عندي 10 دقائق, I need to go fast. And this is where we end up with. Urban sprawl, إذا زرتونا أنتم بالكويت, from the airport all the way to the city center, where you're probably going to be staying, all you see is a sea of neighborhoods that have been densifying in almost a haphazard way. Zooming in on the urban neighborhood, I will be discussing briefly 3 projects in 3 different scales. What I would like to focus on is not a deep explanation of these projects, rather than a lens on building tectonics, the social issues related to these projects, and third, the governance factors. With the smallest unit, and I do believe that sustainability starts from the individual, this is how we're interjecting into these plots. These are 375 adjacent plots. 375 square meters are the smallest available plots in Kuwait. We, of course, along with the client, are trying to re-understand what a Kuwaiti house should stand for. A lot of the younger generation are going back to the outdoor-indoor relationship, how we used to live before in courtyard houses, where well-being, which is a very strong concept of sustainability, can exist. And then the challenge is this. With the density that we have to create residences, our challenge here in both houses was to rethink the house, the courtyard house, vertically. So how we can construct outdoor spaces that can induce positive air movement throughout the house, vertically, channel in light in a private manner, because the development of these neighborhoods became very quickly unprivate. And we ended up with something, when I talk about building tectonics, that's very primitive in a way. We're not talking about very complex systems. It's just systems of shading, induce wind patterns within these, what we call them, blue cores. The houses from the outside are very private. This is a personal input on behalf of the architectural team of what we see the Northern Gulf architecture should be about. It's an architecture that looks inwards. The interior, of course, lives in, and that goes, in my point of view, very well with how we used to live and exist to live, but our buildings are not catering to the way that we live. So the issue of sustainability starts from the individual living in these blocks. The next project goes to the community scale. And this was a project that we did for a developer in coordination with the Public Authority for Youth and Sports to rethink their presence in these urban, suburban neighborhoods. As architects, and I think pertains to a lot of the discussions that happened yesterday, we kind of change hats. So one time you're a designer, another time you're a researcher, you're a social engineer, you work on organizational structures, and this is what we do at the initial phase, is to understand what are we dealing with here. We look into the development plan, we see what's, can you go up again just a little bit, please? What are the pertinent issues to this type of facilities? Who are the stakeholders? And then rethink the facility that used to exist in a different way. Keep in mind, we're densifying these areas, so we have to be very careful as to what we propose. Next. So within the youth centers, there are two issues. One was thinking of them as a building. So how can we create a building that can be in a residential neighborhood? Second is, what is a youth center? What is a contemporary youth center? So we evolved the program of what a youth center is to include community houses, which is an extension of your house, local offices, and many other components. The idea of the architecture is to cut up the building into smaller components as to sit with the urban grid, and then merge that building with a landscape platform that surrounds the buildings and acts as a buffer zone between the community and the bigger buildings that sit on the inside of that building. Of course, when it comes to building tectonics, the building here, can we go down a bit? Sorry. ما في شيء على الشاشة. في there's nothing. تمام. هو كان not even in the USB, right? ما يخالف. سامحونا. في two more examples بس بحاول أنا أكمل وأنهي بنقاط معينة. The more we grow in terms of a scale of a project, the more complex it gets. The role of the architect becomes an orchestrator of events rather than just a designer. And that becomes very important. And these projects are actually explorations of how I found my role practicing in Kuwait. I apologize, but I would like to end with a clip. It's a clip from مسرحية كويتية كوميدية. طبعا احنا الكويتيين معروفين بالمسرحيات الكوميدية اللي كانت بسنة 1985. شفتها recently وشفت نفسي فيها. كوني كنت بمجلس الأعلى للتخطيط، مستشار مجلس الوزراء, there were certain discussions of what sustainability is. And when I looked at that very basic play, it strung a chord on how we perceive sustainability or what constitute the definition of sustainability. شيخة الحين أنا نهيت البرزنتيشن بس تبيني أكملها. Yeah? That's the infrastructural scale. And this is where we deal with the KCU itself. So the last project, which is the largest scale, we tackled the KCU in general. To create better energy efficient KCUs. سامحوني. If we can play the video, please. شكرا. يعطيكم العافية.
شايات للربع على حسابي.
من هالجيسك اليوم.
بالمبارك. شو عليك؟ تستغنون ايش عليك؟
نعم استغني
تستغنون؟
شلون؟
تقعدون الصبح ياكلكم كل الديره اغنياء كلها. كانوا نكلم ديوانيه عروقها بالماي، تقرا المستقبل وهو بالارحام، تكشف المكتوم وتخفي المعلومه الديوانيه.
هذول كتات اطفال مو ديوانيه. ما علينا، ايش قالوا لك؟
يقولون لك اول شيء القروض والديون اللي على المواطنين كلها بتطيح. بنمحي ونبتدي من يده ويديد.
يعني بالطيله.
بالطيله. وكل هذا يقولون لك عزمت الحكومه تاخذه من الاحتياطي العام واحتياطي الاجيال القادمه. يقول لك الحكومه عزمت بتسحك الاحتياطي مو لي.
انا ترى اذونا ويا احتياطي الاجيال القادمه، انا اقول له الحكومه تعد كم اسره كويتيه وتقلب كل رب اسره وتحط بيده نص مليون دينار وتقول له بتنش في اجيالك القادمه. واحنا
انا رايي من رايك يا ابو هاني.
هاي رأي هذا حكي يا جماعه ليش ماكو منطقه ذا.
ثاني شيء الخبر الثاني من الديوانيه اللي عروقها في الماي. يقولون لك الحكومه عزمت تسمن الديره كلها.
بدينا.
الحكومه ارصدت 100,000 مليون، وهذه 6 مكاين وصلت المينا امس. السر عندكم بالامان يا جماعه، 6 مكاين وصلت المينا امس.
مكاينه
مكاين يا جماعه، السر عندكم بالامان. مال طبع النوط الجديد.
نوط جديد؟
بعد اسبوع بيطلع نوط ب 1000 دينار. لكن يقولون لك هالطولة.
تفضل.
الحكومة بتثمن كل اللي خارج السور وتبي هالديرة يردون من يده ويديد داخل السور. والسياسة هذه سمتها الحكومة، السر عندكم بالأمان، سياسة العودة.
يعني الحين هذول اللي برا كلهم المناطق يردون داخل السوق.
يردون داخل السوق.
زين وشلون بشيل داخل السوق؟ هالأمة هذه شلون بتشيلها داخل السوق؟ ها؟
صح، وايد مناطق. قادسية، كيفان، فلطاس، وحليفة، شحيد. والله يا ابو هاني طافني هالسؤال، لكن وانا ولد ابوي الحين يتردد. جبار، جايات مرة ثانية على حسابي للربع. شلون بتشيلهم الديرة؟ بتشيلهم الديرة يا ابو هاني وبتزيد.
شلون بالله شلون؟
يقولون لك بيسوون الديرة طبقات.
يعني ناس فوق ناس.
ناس فوق ناس، بيتك بيت جارك، بيت جارك، جار جارك. بيسوون الكويت 100 طبقة.
ابو فادي
نعم.
احنا كذي ومطشرين ولا احنا خالصين من الازدحام؟ بعد هالمره بتكودهم داخل السور، شي خلصك من الزحمه؟
كل شيء فكرت فيه الحكومة، كل شيء عندي رده. هني يقول يدور الجسور. انا الحين يوم رحت من سويت له تليفون، انا سويت تليفون حق ديوانيه وزير الاشغال، يقول لك الكويت كلها بتصير جسور طقه واحده، سيارات ممنوع ما تمشي.
هذا وزير الاشغال؟
نعم.
خلصنا من وزير الماليه.
نعم.
انزين ما دام جسور محطوطه كلها وسيارات ما تمشي، ايش حق الجسور بعد ما دام ما في سيارات؟
جسور حق القطارات. يقول لك الكويت بتصير كلها قطارات، سيارات ممنوع ما تمشي.
شلون فهمنا؟
تطلع من بيتك الصبح بشتك تحت الطق تركب قطارك. رايح وزارتك خالص دوامك، نوطك بقلبك بجيبك راكب قطارك. رايح فرضتك خاري خبرتك، صار بنوطك بقلبك راكب قطارك راد بيتكم.
Hello? Okay. That was heavy on the neck. Okay, I'm keen on whole systems design and the philosophy of architecture. This conference is titled Architecture for the Future, and my part is about sustainability. But what if I told you that I don't believe in sustainability as it is defined, and I don't think it's good enough for us? Let's start. I'm a pacer, okay? So I'm going to pace. Let's start with a simple definition from Wikipedia. Oh my God, can you? No, sorry, I forgot. Okay. Okay. This is a definition about sustainable architecture, and I need you to think through it with me and notice the words that are used. Sustainable architecture is architecture that seeks to minimize the negative environmental impact of buildings by efficiency and moderation in the use of materials, energy, and development space, and the ecosystem at large. Sustainable architecture uses a conscious approach to energy and ecological conservation in the design of the built environment. This idea of sustainability or ecological design is to ensure that our actions and decisions today do not inhibit the opportunities of future generations. You notice it's very frugal, very stingy, it's limited. And of course, we Arabs are different. The idea of sustainability, you have to understand the history of where it came from. The Brundtland Commission report in the United Nations defined sustainability, the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This is in the sustainability goals at the UN as well. Its history included the incorporation of the National Environmental Policy Act. Now notice the year, 1969. The UN Conference on Human Environment, they had this conference since 1971. Now you have to take a snapshot of the world in 1960. North Africa, South America, they were all fighting Indonesia, they were all fighting colonialism, right? And the developing nations were beginning to want to use resources because the usage of resources actually creates progress. The developing nations came to a compromise with the developing nations so that for conservation. So effectively what they were saying to the developing nations, you have to curb yourselves and the use of resources. We made a mess of things, but now all of us together have to take care of the plight that we found ourselves in. And the only good thing about this is it was agreed that sustainability was to approach in 3 dimensions or pillars: environmental, social, and economic. Now, you saw the words used. Sustainability is an attitude of good enough, minimizing negative impact. Where is Saudi Arabia in this equation? Where is our architectural heritage? How does this relate to our culture? As Saudis, we are actually, as you were in Kuwait, we were literally launched from a traditional society to modernity without due process of cultural development, including architectural language. We literally stepped off the camel into the Cadillac. Do you all agree with me, or? Yeah? Okay, now Saudi Arabia is a developing nation, yet it uses resources like a developed nation. And you can see that here. Notice, this is 2003. It's a lot worse now, but I couldn't find a more recent, now it's your turn to get hurt. Yeah. And you see, look at South America, look at Africa, look at India. I mean, it's, when they start using it right, we're in deep, deep trouble as a planet. So, I mean, I'm not going to go into sustainability because everyone here knows about it and is probably aware of how to use Adobe, rammed earth, passive, active, solar energy, budget permitting, the new research and development, 3D printing of houses. And I'd like to call it the 3 S's of Saudi sustainability. Sun, sand, sun, and shade, okay? It sounds like a day in the beach, but that's what we have. In the past, sustainability was compact, communal design. That's how you sustained yourselves in difficult environments. Also, we had the principle of the cracked earth cities, and this was across the board. And it's very interesting how it developed. Ours really defined itself through inheritance laws, how the houses were also cut. Now, Saudi Arabia actually has one of the lowest home ownership rates in the world. And remember, we use resources like a developed nation. So it's kind of difficult. We no longer have a communal approach to building. The technologies we use are unsustainable, too expensive, and frankly illogical. Standalone buildings with linear meters of exposed walls, and you have to understand that we have a wall, and then the perimeter wall, and then the villa walls. And as opposed to sharing of walls, but also we have linear kilometers of costly infrastructure because it's no longer compact and communal design. Norman Foster wrote a very interesting paper on this where he found Notting Hill, I hope I'm not wrong, with its high density in London was actually very effective and very user-friendly. Now, for the future, I mean, obviously we need user-friendly shaded streets, we need communal architecture. I believe, this is my opinion, we need to use principles like the Sabi' Jar, or the seventh neighbor, but we can use it vertically, horizontally. We need to address scale and proportion. We have to see our strong points and develop them ourselves into a modern language through logical progression of objective thought, as opposed to copying ideologies and transporting them from other places without thinking about it. Sustainability is, as it's defined by the West, is not actually owned by us. As Dr. Aliaa said, we have it in our backgrounds, it's real, and we're good at it, and we had been for years. But as it's defined, it's not within our psyche, and I actually refuse it. We need to go back to our roots, use what is logical and sustainable and cost-effective now, with a critical eye to our future needs in terms of technology and progress. We have to be our own heroes. What is our role as Saudi architects in this global arena? What is our identity? How do we own ideologies without them colonizing our mindset as some kind of alien soft power? Does anyone know what soft power is? Okay. Soft power is actually the opposite of hard power, which is with armies. Soft power is colonizing your culture. Hip hop, clothes. They colonize you, and you let them, and you live in the reservation, and you don't even know it. I meant like an Indian reservation. So what do we need to do? We go back to the source. We have a primary principle in Islam. It's called the unity of man. Ummah wahida. one community. It comes small as a family unit and then grows and grows and grows. And it becomes a universal principle. There's no limitation to its definition. It was established, actually, this idea by the Prophet ﷺ. When he was invited to Yathrib, he changed its name to Medina. That was a very intelligent move. I mean, you would expect it, right? When he changed the name to Al-Madina Al-Munawwara, the enlightened city, he actually created a prototype. And he said, Ana Nabi al-Ummi. And I need you to think about it, because Ummi, Ummah, it's not only about not knowing how to read or write. He then penned something very interesting, the Medina Charter. It was the world's first, am I on time? Am I too late? Okay, because I only have the same amount of time you did. So he penned the world's first constitution, which granted equal rights of worship. Remember, he was the Muslim coming in. The people in Medina were pagans, what would be now called kuffar, but he didn't call them kuffar, and Jews. And as he came into Muslim, he penned this agreement where everybody had equal rights under the law and equal rights to worship. And, you know, I would never have said this last year, but now, with the power given to me by Vision 2030, I can say it. So, he then called all the citizens, one community, Umma Wahida, and he established an ideal city-state. Now, and then he established the Medina Mosque. It was the world's first community center. Actually, the prayer, you had learning, you had judicial, you had financial, you had administrative functions. You actually had healing. There was an open kitchen from the Prophet's houses, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he actually permitted poetry and games to be played in that area. So it's very interesting and visionary, the power of this concept. And you can see this is an exact translation, and I invite you to read and study about it, because you own it as well. The Charter of Medina, and the Dastur al-Medina in Arabic, and the Medina Mosque, Jami', to collect people. And it had social, political, administrative, cultural functions. Of course, I thank Professor Dr. Safak Omar. He's devoted his life, the study on this. The primary principle, Ummah Wahida, is supported by two secondary principles. And the two secondary principles are about the spirit, the mind, and the body. When these are aligned in a social context, as well as an individual context, it's healthy. You have a healthy community. 2 minutes? You have a healthy community, and you have a healthy body. Okay, now we need insan, zaman, makan. And that's the socio-environmental, cultural aspects. So, we understand this because all of us understand the hadith, Islam, Iman, Ihsan. So we have physical, mental, spiritual. When we relate it to architecture, we have building codes, sustainability, and something we have created called benefitability. Ihsan, beneficence, and to beautify. And we all know as Arabs and Muslims, al-hasana multiplies. And that's what I meant, that sustainability is not good enough. Now taking that definition and applying it to sustainable, the same definition from Wikipedia, but we own it through hasana. Read the words, we don't have time, but multiply, positive, benefit, propagation and enrich. It is the opposite of the previous one. So we have the beneficial architecture works in 5 spheres. Individual, which is very similar to the unit. And then it goes into a social benefits. You know, you can even make a little hole for a cat to give birth in. And that's part of the social beneficence. Then you have communal benevolence for the public. And we know about this. This is in Islam. Awqaf, libraries, hospitals, mosques, schools, and we own this. Then you have the global energy environment. And we know the Prophet ﷺ and hadith that talked about this protection of the environment. The last one is the biggest sphere of all. It's about the virtues, the metaphorical, what makes us a rational animal, what makes us play games and grow. Here we have sifat and ma'ani. How is that done in architecture? Khalq, how we express that, and akhlaq. How the architecture that glorifies the oneness, the unity. Architecture manifests majesty and beauty to create completion. الجلال والجمال يؤدي للكمال. We have our own yin and yang, and it's ours. And of course, architecture that uses Islamic principles of design. Did you know that we had our own feng shui? For example, steps in a house should be odd-numbered, and there are many others. So we gave an example of a few things. This is the Aga Khan citation, where we actually did all the symbolic aspects, al-batin, al-batn, al-haram, al-bayt, wal-zahir. And then we talked about symbols of earth, wind, and fire in a salon, and what's socio-fugal and what's socio-pedal. And another hair salon. I mean, we apply it in everything we do. We have to, because we're rational beings. So we took the idea of a caravanserai and applied it to this place. And in Bozan, we actually took this concept and the yin and yang and Islamic concept, it's the same, and we applied it in the hub. And we also took the idea of water and how the walls work in another project. And so, I want to end it very quickly. Benefitability in architecture is the starting point from where we, as Arabs, need to continue to develop architecture that expresses beauty and benevolence, enriches our planet, and confirms man as Khalifatullah al-Ard. How do you prove that? Otherwise, it's words. To be that, you have to do that. And this, the steward of the global village, the concept of benevolence is not new to us. We need to apply it with clear rules, policies, procedures, formatting, and we can take ownership of this concept and apply it in our design and other aspects, because this is beneficial, and it can be beneficial design in everything. And that's it, I did it. So the last thing I want to say is nobody really quotes this man, but I want to today. Let's look at this benevolent architecture, and let's make Arabia great again. That's it.
Thank you very much, Architect Abdullatif and Architect Azzah, for this wonderful, panel. And I would like to, first of all, I would like to open for questions. If you have any questions. Yes?
Thank you for both speakers. It's a really interesting subject between urbanisms and urban planning and urbanism and principles of Islamic fabric and cities. I lived, I born in Al-Hassa and lived 18 years, where, as you know, it has different districts with really macro and micro urban fabrics. I studied at King Faisal universities, both master and bachelor's. In master, I studied with Basim Hakim. He taught us Arab Islamic cities, principles of Arab Islamic cities in case of Tunis. And Amarat al-Ard by Jamil Akbar. My master was in history theory and criticism. Just seeing this, and I'm still loved architecture and comparing architecture between Arab Islamic cities and the West. Noticed, I was believe there is principles in Arab Islamic cities based in fiqh and sharia. Today, I did not believe in that for one reason. I found many cities in Italy is almost similar to the urban fabric of Al-Hassa, Riyadh, Baghdad, okay? It has all of the structure of the urban. Similars. The difference only there is, we have the mosques and they have the church and the plaza. Although 2 years ago I was seeking and researching about minimalist and Zen, I found Zen, they have Zen architecture and they have their own roles and principles. Lately there is revolution and new urbanism, the principles. Okay, if a new urbanism. Comparing all of these, yes, we have the absence today of principles in the Middle East of dealing with the urban fabric based on environment. This is a major problem, and social, since revolution of the oils came and revival, all of a sudden we're changing everything because we had a lack of transformations. Knowledge of how do we transfer from indigenous architecture and modernities. All of these, I think, we need to verifying the principle. Today, we are only saying theories, but there is no physical principles. This, I think, the lack of today, we didn't have them. In the designing, either in the level of urban planning or urban design or at a level of living, housing. How do you, I mean, Sayyida Azzah, you seeing this reading?
Okay, I can answer that simply. First of all, in the Christian cities you saw, they had the same principles. Because during the medieval ages, Christianity was actually different. It was closer to Islamic thought. And don't forget also familial, communal survival. The same principles applied. So you will find similarities actually all over the world. Hindu, China, I mean in India, China, Africa, everywhere. Just like you find similarities in a carpet, the ethnic carpets from Nepal to Latin America actually look the same. And that's what we call primordial philosophy. It's one. I won't go into it. It's very deep, but it can be applied. And benevolence can be applied very, very precisely. Just needs to be written up and done. Rules and formats and policies and procedures.
Okay, I have a question actually for Architect Abdullatif. You introduced the idea of the suburban block, and your initiatives to reform it in many different ways. And I was always thinking about this relationship between the block and the building in itself, and how we can bridge the gap between the two of them in terms of sustainability. Sometimes we get delved so much in the building features and we forget the block, and sometimes we think about the block and forget the other one. So how can we bridge this gap between the two of them, the two scales of architecture, and how can the urban policies help in this way?
Yeah, thank you for giving me this question, because the last example I wanted to show touches upon how you would link these urban units back into a communal space. But also, just to get to your point, I think throughout history we've been stuck in understanding or trying to find a prescription of how do I construct my own space by looking at history. And I think some, at least to me, someone who's working as a contemporary architect in Kuwait, part of this generation, not my grandfather's or his father, is that we do have our histories. The suburban block, that's a Western construct, right? We brought it from Europe. By us saying, you know what, we want to appropriate it and make it ours, we're actually evolving it into what could be our own type of development. Because I think you also need a sense of maturity and density. And when these cities started developing, the know-how was almost purely Western. And if it's not purely Western, it's from the Arabs in the Levant, in North Africa, not from this region. And throughout the years, I think we started developing our own understanding of these spaces. So they're inherently ours. I wouldn't say they're not ours, but it's by actually going there and through performance, through activity, you appropriate them into what could be something that's Saudi, Kuwaiti, Bahraini, and so forth. So going back to what you've mentioned, for us to redesign the KCU, the Kindergarten Center Unit, by putting emphasis on public spaces, whether they're coming from inherent notions of what we believe in, or sometimes superficial things like when we hear about well-being and walkability, which all cities currently are being designed to do, right? Both, I think, are a response to what could take us into a better direction. I don't know if you would allow me to show the last, even some slides, if possible, of the last project. Because it goes also to what Ms. Azzah said about Al-Jami'. Because our mosques, if you can go to the final image, mosques in Kuwait have been narrowed down to a service being placed on an urban block with a gate around it. And by us opening up that gate and allowing that mosque to be the center of community and actually juxtaposing it to the nursery, which is the initial building block of society when it comes to education, you start to create a dialogue between the metaphysical and the worldly, let's say. And this goes through how we at least try to address part of what you just mentioned. آخر slide presentation.
Slide, yeah.
Bad. It's this slide. So here you'd see the mosque in the center, and everything leads you to the mosque, to this plaza. All areas are walkable, and it's a way of stitching back the city.
And this question is actually for both of you. How can we improve, how can regulations and urban policies discourage or encourage sustainability in our region? How do you see the effect of it?
I'm the wrong person to ask because I've decided that sustainability is not enough. So I would answer that question on the platform of benefitability. Okay, so I agree. I mean, I think the policies and procedures have to be done taking the best, choosing. We have the whole world to choose from. Taking the best, understanding it, and owning it ourselves. Not a copy-paste attitude, but with analysis and logic, and the application, what's the best of for us.
Definitely, definitely. I think this is part of what we're trying to do now, even in Kuwait, as we evolve our planning principles. The way, I mean, just a simple thing, and we've addressed it also in this project. Kuwait has a single building code, the whole country. You only can build one type of residence. You cannot do duplexes, you cannot do triplexes, townhouses. All these types are not there. And for that reason, we as Shabab, we cannot attain residences. You're either a millionaire to get one of these plots and build on them, or you cannot have a smaller housing unit. So as part of our investigation in changing the KCU is bringing in the diversity of different housing units. And these things also evolve. When you first get married, you might need a flat. Afterwards, you might move into duplex, a townhouse, and then you'd move into the villa. But there are bigger notions in what I think I really like the benefitability perspective. I think it's definitely what sustainability is missing in that, because it touches upon other things and much complex issues that are socio-economic and political too.
Aligns with the new theory of abundance. So
Yes,
instead of cutting, what can we add instead of just cutting
Yes.
our use or consumption?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say it's العلم الكثرة. And in Arabic, it's the knowledge of the abundance. And that's the next level after benefitability. So we have to get the benefitability down-packed and then move into this other world that's absolutely amazing called abundance.
Wonderful. I'm afraid we're over time.
I'll miss my plane.
Yes, over there.
Hi, I'm Hisham Murtada. I'm professor of architecture at King Abdulaziz University. Well, I have an issue with the notion of sustainability in Gulf states. You know, we've been talking about sustainable built environment, sustainable architecture. You know, my studio at King Abdulaziz University called Sustainable Development, and every semester we start with a new batch of students. I ask them to go and find me an example of a sustainable building in Saudi Arabia or sustainable neighborhood. But in reality, there is none. We've been talking about this for the last 20 years, and only we see nice perspectives, nice images, and so on, and these, to me, are lies. So I think even the master city, when they tried to apply it, when the principles of sustainability proved to be a failing project. You know, a few weeks ago, I've been reading an article saying that Master City has become the first ghost green city in the world because it's been abandoned and the idea collapsed. So I think there is a need to think about the approach of sustainability from the local context and also from the application side. Is the society ready for this? I don't know. The rules, I'm not sure. I wrote a book called Traditional Principles of Built Environment, Traditional Islamic Principles of Built Environment, and it discussed all these issues. You know, and there is also another book called One Ummah, One Built Environment, also tackled all these things. But I think there is something that needed to be done in order to make this sustainability thing real and visible to a new generation. Thank you.
Do you want to comment, Ms. Azzah? I would like to comment.
Yes,
I think it's very true, because I think there's a problem by seeing sustainability in the Western notion as an end goal, and it's not. It's continually becoming something. So when you look at the renders of something that, oh, this is sustainable, static, that by default is not the way it's supposed to be. I mean, Masdar was an amazing experience. It's still to this day, it's an amazing experience. What's amazing about Masdar is not Masdar itself, but all the projects that it does outside of Abu Dhabi, all بالعالم كله. So it's created an ecosystem of itself, of experimentation with sustainable systems. But sustainability goes beyond that. And the reason why I showed the video, although it's kind of comedic and satirical, It's very true. احنا ما راح نتقدم ولا راح نتغير ولا راح نتطور إذا احنا قاعد ننظر حق الموضوع بنظريات معينة. فit comes with the individual. يعني how I perceive wealth, how I perceive distribution of wealth. سالفة القروض. This is at the core of a nation state. Its resilience and sustainability and continuity. إطاحة القروض كان موضوع بمجلس الأمة كم سنة؟ هذا من 85 بس قبل سنتين وثلاثة كان هذا مطلب شعبي. This has to do with sustainability. It affects me as an architect when I come and I design a building or a community or a public facility. What I tried to do, which I didn't do today, is to show how sustainability is something that's dense. ما تجي حق بيت معين. It's not photovoltaics. It's not systematic. It's actually a growing, living tissue that's part of all our society. And that's why you don't see these communities yet, because I think it requires another type of evolution.
And I just want to ask a question to all of you. It's very important that we understand benevolence or sustainability is about a human process. Because what would happen if all the buildings were sustained and there was no humanity? Who cares? You know, you have to understand that it starts for us, by us, with us. And that's why I have a problem with the definition, the Western definition of sustainability. They don't talk about the human factor. So you're doing it for a building, a city. So what? It's man. He is the center. He is al-Khalifa. He is the rational animal. And if we all started to think about that, I don't want to go into brotherly love, but it's nice. And, you know, it has meanings. But if you could do that and you could design like that, it would be amazing.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry for the technical issue happened with your presentation, and I hope that all of you enjoyed the talks as much as I did. And please help me thanking them again with a round of applause. Thank you. Sorry, we had